7, and we're in the next to the last teaching from the book of Matthew. We have done the entire book of Matthew, and the next time that we do it will be the end of it. We'll complete it. And that's gone on how many years? About 5 years it took us to do the book of Matthew. And we've done every sentence in it, and now we're reaching the end. We got to the point past the crucifixion, and we get to the point of resurrection time. And so let's look at it together, and let's see if it can touch you and help you to try to understand the part you play in your life. I don't know how many of you saw Bill Moyer's program on healing in the mind. You did? Okay, I did too. There was one thing that Bill Moyers pointed out to people, and that was the inclusion of meditation in so many hospitals across the country. And one of the fellows, I don't know which hospital it was, but he came up with this, which is a technique which is very interesting. He took his meditation group, and they went around with a little plate of raisins, and he had everybody take one raisin. And he said, this is what you do. Just take the raisin, and everybody just chew it and chew it and chew it and taste it and sense it and feel it. And for the first time in your life, experience a raisin, you know. And they did. They were chewing the raisin, and he's, you know, getting them to just... And people were realizing maybe that's the first time that they've ever stopped. Because usually with raisins, you know, you take a bite and boom, down they go. That's what I used to do with Oreo cookies. I mean, I didn't even chew them, you know. Because, you know, in the back of your mind is, you know, somebody else is going to get these, and I'm going to get my Oreos. And you take a big jug of milk and Oreo cookies and down. And you can see they would stack up in your stomach the same way they were in the bag. You know, boom, boom, boom. You didn't even bite. Oh, there they go. And basically that's what life is all about, and that's why we get screwed up. But he had these people doing this, experiencing a raisin, you know, and they were chewing a raisin. And then he said, and now let's take the next step. He said, I want you to experience in the same way that you chewed the raisin, I want you to experience your breath. Very slowly. Just feel it come in, feel it go out. Feel, and start to experience yourself. Start to experience the source of what we've been overlooking. And the point is that everything we've done so fast, we've experienced nothing. And the most important part, which is ourselves, we have no connection with. We don't understand. And so here we get to the point of Jesus and this resurrection. I want you to look at these things, and I'll show you things that you've never seen before, so you can begin to look and approach these things spiritually and not literally, you know. You can have your own concepts of what beliefs and traditional beliefs are, and I'm not interested in that. I'm trying to take this and make it a spiritual experience for you, that the crucifixion and the resurrection is not relegated to something 2,000 years ago. It's something that happens and occurs within each one of us and has a tremendous meaning. So let's first of all see the implications spiritually, and we'll go to Matthew chapter 27, page 807 in Little Bibles, and verse 62, okay? So here's the crucifixion has taken place, and so forth and so on. And in verse 62 it says, the next day that followed the day of the preparation, the chief priests and Pharisees came together to Pilate. See? And what do we have? You have the same thing that you have going on now. You have religious leaders and civil leaders, and they're all mixed up with one another, and both of them have the same interests. The government and religion has the same interest, and that's why they can accommodate each other so well. And that interest is controlling the masses, controlling the minds of the people. They're very comfortable with one another. See, the government is not very comfortable with a situation like we have here. We would be considered, you know, some kind of an outside group, you know, some kind of an off-the-wall group. But mainline religion, the government's very comfortable with. You know, they have their, you know, parades and so forth and so on. They even come into churches with the color guard, you know, and the guns on their shoulders, and everybody's very comfortable because religion and the government both have the same goal, and that is keep the masses in line. Control the minds of people. Don't allow people to start thinking as individuals. Don't allow people to start expressing themselves because it gets very dangerous. See? Now I want you to see something interesting here. We're talking about Jesus Christ in the book of Matthew. And look how he is referred in Matthew 27, verse 63. Here are the religious people saying, Sir, we remember that Deceiver said while he was yet alive, after 3 days I will rise again. See? Who is regarded as the deceiver? Jesus. Not a cult leader. This isn't the guy from Waco, Texas, or somebody that blows up. This is Jesus Christ being called by the religious people, and these are the really big religious people of the day, a deceiver. See, in that day, everybody followed these religious people as in the same way they do today. They follow the Presbyterians, the Baptists, the Catholics, or whatever, the main line. And the main line regarded him as the deceiver. And I'll tell you the truth, if they understood really who he was, and what he is, they still do. He's a deceiver. And he was a deceiver then. And see, what they're saying is, this, if you get too close to this guy, he's going to deceive you, and you could lose your salvation, you could lose your understanding of God. He's going to fill you with deception. And basically, it's the same thing they say about what goes on here. Because what is he talking about? Here's a guy that's teaching that you must practice the single eye in order to find light. That's very cultish. That's very, very cultish. And yet that's what he said. Go, if your Bibles, you turn back to Matthew 6. I don't have the page that's, what's the page number of Matthew 6, verse 781? Okay, and go to verse 22. And look what Jesus says on page 781, verse 22. Matthew 6, verse 22. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye be single, your whole body shall be filled with light. This guy's teaching single eye meditation. That's a cult. According to even those of today will say, this is a cultist teaching. It's Hindu teaching. It's Buddhist teaching. So what Bill Moyers was sharing with people. You say, my God, what's happening in hospitals all over the world today is actually Buddhist. It is. It's exactly what it is. It's Buddhism, which is flourishing in the hospitals to heal people. And that's the very thing that your religious leaders today say is evil. Stay away from it. In fact, I think next week we get back to another Sunday morning with Buddha, which are always very challenging and very interesting times of psychology that we spend together. But this is what he's teaching. And you know what that means? Practicing the single eye means separating from the thoughts of the human mind. And so what does he say right after Matthew 6:22, where he says, if your eye be single? Look what he says in Matthew 6:25, take no thought. See? And look what he says in verse 27, take no thought. Verse 28, take no thought. Verse 31, take no thought. Verse 34, take no thought. And this is exactly what single eye meditation is. It's exactly the meditation that's being talked about on television today. So he's a very radical person. He's saying that in order for you to really find the essence of God and become one with God, you've got to enter within yourself. Churches can't do it. Religion can't do it. Bibles can't do it. Singing songs can't do it. Nothing that. What you have to do is find that holy place within yourself and allow your consciousness to rise and touch the heart, which is God, which is within you. And this is what the religious teachers of that day said is deceit. And that's exactly what they say today is deceit. Stay away from that kind of stuff because you'll be deceived. So what we have to do then is start to try to take this scripture within yourself, apply it to yourself. See, those who warn you about meditation are not concerned that you're being deceived. Those that warn you about meditation are concerned about losing control over your life. Huh? That's what they're concerned about. They're not one bit concerned about anybody being deceived. They're concerned that suddenly you're going to start to understand. Suddenly you're going to know. Suddenly you're going to start to assert yourself as an individual, as a God individual, as a Christ individual, and they're afraid. Because what the church stands for is when I click, everybody stands up. When I click, everybody kneels. When I click, everybody sits down. It's time to sing a song. Boo! And we all get up and we sing, and then we sit down, and it's over, and you file out, and I'll tell you when to do it. And if you start thinking as an individual that you are one with God, you are one with Christ, all of that stuff goes. And with it goes the money and the authoritarian control. So there's a very interesting thing here that we're going to look at, which is going to leave you right away to question the particular scripture from a standpoint of, is this literal? Is this a drama? Is this allegory? Which it is. But let's look at something interesting. If you look at Matthew 27, verse 63, look what the religious people say. We remember that deceiver said while he was alive, after 3 days I will rise again. See? Now look at verse 64. So what we're saying then to Pilate is, command that the sepulchre be made sure until the third day, lest his disciples come by night and steal him away. See, and then the people say, he's risen from the dead, so the first arrow will be worse than the last. In other words, do something to make sure that that tomb is closed off. In other words, get a stone, get something big, and seal that thing off so nobody can get in there and steal this guy's body. Because he's a deceiver. Because, remember what they said. He said, in 3 days, going to rise again. Now notice, the chief priests and the elders, the religious people, said he would rise again on the third day. Did you just read that? Now, when this occurred in the context of the story, when the resurrection took place, something very interesting happens. And John is talking about the disciples. And this is what I want you to see. Look at page 886. Look at the book of John. John is talking about the disciples. And in fact, nobody showed up when Jesus rose from the dead. Not one of these disciples showed up. And there was a reason. And John lays it out in John chapter 20. And on page 886, John chapter 20, verse 9, John's talking about the disciples, and look what he says. For as yet they knew not the Scripture that he must rise again from the dead. John's saying, we never heard that. Hey, I'm the guy this guy loved the most. Nobody ever told me. We didn't know. Don't you think if there was such a thing where this teacher said, in 3 days I will rise from the tomb, that they would be, at least somebody would be behind a tree with binoculars to see. I mean, nobody showed up. And yet, here's John, who's one of the disciples, saying, nobody knew this. See? You're told to have faith that this happened, and yet the disciples are saying, he didn't. We didn't. They didn't have enough faith to show up. And what does John say? We didn't know it. We didn't know it. And John was one of the disciples who says, never heard that Jesus, yet the chief priests and elders. And this is what I want you to understand. And listen to it very carefully. What you've just seen in the Bible, what the religious hear and what the disciples hear is not the same thing. Two completely different things. See? And also you can go away wondering. You might be going away wondering about this, you see. Because you'll see places where it says Jesus told the disciples on the third day he would rise. But understand, this is allegory, this is mysticism, this is metaphysical, it's theosophical. It's stuff that is told to explore the recesses of your mind and open you up to deep, deep truths. It has nothing to do with literalism at all. If it was literal, then you'd have to say to yourself, if the disciples knew, why didn't they show up when he did rise? And if they didn't know, how is it that the religious people said they knew? They heard him say this, and John says, we didn't know anything about it. So this is allegory. But what this is telling you really, and what I want you to hear really, is what this is all about is your lower mind, the religious, your higher mind, the spirit, the disciples. And what this is saying is that your lower mind, in terms of resurrection, your lower mind believes that the resurrection to the higher is deception. There is nothing that can happen. You're being deceived. I go to meditation, nothing happens. You know, I got sick anyhow. I wasn't able to get rid of my cold, and I meditated. And all of these things, because all of that is being told by the lower mind, which is represented by the Pharisees and all of these people, and the chief priests and all. Pharisees and chief priests and all. It's a bunch of junk. What this is talking about is your lower mind is speaking now, and it's talking to that deep ego within you and saying, this has got to stop. This is deception. This doesn't work, because your lower mind and your higher mind are in constant struggle within you for control of your destiny in your life. And for 99% of our existence, we have given the power to the lower. And we have cut out that which is the higher. And that's what's being said. And anything will be done to try to stop the inner activity by the outer. And the church takes, a very strong part in being compared to the lower mind. And so they'll take whatever activity is necessary to stop you, and you're told, this is a cult. This is the great thing there. This is Hinduism. You got to stay away from this. This is Eastern religions. You'll open your mind to devils. All of this stuff that you've been told, they'll do everything they possibly can do to seal that tomb that you're laying in. See what I'm saying? They'll roll that stone in front of that tomb to make sure that you stay firmly dead. Yeah? They don't want you to come to life. They want you dead. And so they'll roll the stone in front of your tomb to make sure you stay put. And that's where I was all my life. Totally, I had no idea of this stuff. I had no idea the truth. I never understood this stuff. I used to read this stuff, and I never believed it. But I thought, well, that's what everybody does. I mean, I went to church, girls put handkerchiefs on their head. I didn't ever figure that out. I often wondered, I wonder if they use them before they put them on their head. I mean, I never understood it. My mind used to always propel me into these bizarre types of things and thinking like that, you know. And when you took Holy Communion and the most holy one is going into your mouth, then where does it go? You know, I mean, these things are the way my mind works. And so they were dealing with some kind of a revolutionary many years ago, and I guess that's why they shunted me off to different places when I was a little child. But anyhow, when I come together and come to grips with the reality that we have now, you and I have to see what we're looking at. The stone, okay, has rolled away from your tomb. That's why you're sitting here. In spite of all the effort that has been made by the religious to keep you entombed all of your life, to keep you dead from the reality of what nature is, to keep you dead from the reality of what cosmic universal essence of God is, in spite of all of that, there is a power that has intervened between you and them, and the stone has been rolled away from your tomb, and you have risen again. Because the stone that is in front of the tomb is called religion. So the story goes in Matthew 26, verse 65. Pilate said, okay, you have a watch, go your way, make it as sure as you can. The watch was set, the stone was sealed. But think, understand something. The people that are setting the stone in place, the people that are setting the watch are blind. They're deaf. So how can they see? How can they feel? How can they sense resurrection power? They can't. They never will. They'll never understand this. Nobody can ever understand this. And so as we go into Matthew 28, which is the last chapter in the book of Matthew, and when we conclude this after years and years of teaching every word in the book of Matthew, I want you to remember that resurrection is a mystical experience. And resurrection is not a body getting out of a grave, because bodies don't get out of a grave. Resurrection is the energy that rises from the lower depths of your being up into the higher depths of your being and finally culminates in touching that which is created God, nature, inside of you in the higher realms of consciousness. The life force that brings you to understanding, the life force that brings you to enlightenment, which you call God, that's resurrection. That's what Jesus really is. Because what you have done is you've come and in meditation, you have crucified the five senses. You have nailed those five senses of sight, taste, touch, smell, and hearing to that inner tree. And now you are dead to that which is the world, and you rise up into the holy place. In spite of the tomb, and in spite of the sense of literal deafness that you've been put in, you've risen anyhow. The stone has been rolled away, and this is your resurrection time. What happens here is that you get to the end of the Sabbath, and that's where this occurs. And when you are at the end of the Sabbath, you know what the word Sabbath means? It means two things. It means rest, and it means seven. The Sabbath is the seventh chakra. The Sabbath is the seventh chakra. God worked, created 6 days, and on the seventh he rested. And the energy that rises up the 6 chakras through the spinal canal, once it overcomes the 6, it then comes to the Sunday of your life. It comes to the Sunday. That which is in your body, which is the same or symbol of the sun, is called the pineal gland of the brain. That's the sun. That's the Sunday. And when you rise and your energy impacts the pineal gland of the brain, that is the cosmic Sunday of the mind. the cosmic Sunday of your life. And that's why on the seventh day it says that God rested. That's why on the seventh day that Joshua walked around, and on the seventh time the walls fell down, because when you energize that seventh chakra, which is the pineal gland of the brain, the wall falls down, which keeps you from the left side to the right hemisphere of the brain. It opens the right hemisphere of the brain, and you enter into the Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden is the right hemisphere of the brain. That's why the Garden of Eden is eastward, because every time you look northeast is on the right-hand side. So this is where we're at. It's the end now of the seventh. Your energy has risen. This is what's going on. The resurrection above the lower mind has taken place. And that's what happened with so many of you. And that's the way you start to think differently. The reason you start to think differently is because you start to think with cells in the right hemisphere that you hadn't thought of with before. The creative nature is at the right hemisphere. So let's go on. We're into Matthew 28, which is the last chapter in the book of Matthew. I want you to notice something. It's the end of the Sabbath. We got to the seventh chakra, and as it began to dawn towards the first day of the week, the darkness is over. You have become enlightened. You started to understand. You are no longer content simply to listen to people tell you this is the way it is. Now you have seen light within yourself. Things start to open as I say, it's not the way it is. It's not the way it should be. And I begin to understand, and when you are enlightened, the first source of energy to appear is who? The women. You notice that? The first source of energy. When you impact at that seventh chakra, the first thing that happens, the women come, which means the spiritual aspects of your ego start to be awakened. The women always mean, in that higher realms of consciousness, spirit. The feminine principle, the spiritual activity, which is really God, has overcome the lower carnal spirit, and the first one that comes to the risen one is the women, the spirit. You activate the spirit becomes alive within you, and you start understanding, and you start feeling, and you start thinking, and you start saying, my God, this is not the way the life is supposed to be. This is not the way the world is supposed to be. What happened? You've got all of these religions all over the world, and they kill each other, they bomb each other, they hate each other, they separate people from one another. My God, that's not the way. All should be one Jesus Christ. One with nature, one with the planet, one with the universe, one with the animals, one with all that lives and breathes, one. And so the women come, which means the spirit comes. And what is the one thing that all of these religions, whether they be Christian religion, Eastern religions, what is it they have in common? Keep the women quiet. Don't allow the women to come up because it'll disrupt. Yeah, because they are totally tuned in to the mind, which is masculine, and they know nothing of the woman, which is feminine and spirit. Keep the woman down. Keep the spirit down. It is evil to have women here. It is evil to have meditation here. They're one and the same. Women and meditation are the same thing. Spirit. Keep her down. The next verse is a happening that occurs before the end of the Sabbath. It actually occurs even before the end, before the women appear. Matthew 28, verse 2. Behold, there was a great earthquake. For the angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came, and he rolled back the stone, and he sat on it. And he sat there with his sword, and he says, okay, sucker, come on. The stone will never be rolled back. This tomb will never be sealed again. For the one who was dead is free and has risen upward, and you'll never combine that spirit again. The earthquake. It's amazing. Do you know that how many Christians have sold books every time there's an earthquake? This is it. You know, there's got to be earthquakes. Earthquakes are very normal. Because the earth goes like that. It's like a ball going back and forth like that. There'll always be earthquakes. The only trouble with an earthquake is when you live too close to it. but there'll always be earthquake. That's not the earthquake that's being talked of. The earthquake that's being talked of here is there is a shaking down in the way you think. The earth is your mind. And all of those things which were very important, all of those towers, all of those crystal things, or those cathedrals, and all of these things which are so important have come crashing down and have been destroyed. And things will never be the same. You'll never think the way you used to think. That's what an earthquake is. A shaking down. There's a tremendous change of consciousness. And that's the first thing that you notice. You start thinking differently. You don't think the way other people do. You're like a foreigner in the land now. Even from religious people, you're totally foreign. You can't turn those guys on television and watch them. You can't, and you used to live with that stuff. You couldn't get enough of it. Now you can't even see it. Because you don't think the way they think. And they'll tell you that. For sure you don't think. You think differently. And look at this, Matthew 28:2. The angel of the Lord descended from heaven. This is very, very important. Okay? What is heaven? Heaven is God's kingdom. God's kingdom is heaven. Now that's important because I want to show you something. Let us look then for the location of heaven, because the angel of the Lord descended from heaven. I want you to find God's kingdom. Fine. Come with me to page 853 of the Bible. Look at chapter 17 of Luke, page 853. Luke chapter 17. Okay? And I want you to see verse 21. And what does it say? Neither shall they say here or there, for behold, the kingdom of God, or heaven, is within you. So the angel comes down from heaven. The angel comes down from God's kingdom. That impulse of light, listen to me very carefully, the impulse of light, the new idea comes down and fills you, and you understand. That word El, see, the word El is from the ancient bull Mithra cult. It's of the Mithra cult, and it is the bull cult because it is symbolized by the strength of the bull. Boom! And it was always a bull was strong. So it was always the bull cult. And the god of the bull cult was the god of strength and power, and his name was El. And the spirit god, the one of the deep spirit, his name was Isis. And the name was. And the god of the mind, the god of the pineal gland, the god of the sun was Ra. Is-Ra. El. Has nothing to do with the country. It has to do with the feminine spirit intercoursing with the masculine mind, producing that which is the power of God within you. Is-Ra-El. Huh? And so, who comes down from heaven? The angel. Huh? From within you comes the power, comes the strength. The angel. And what are the angels' name? Michael, Uriel, Raphael, Gabriel. Huh? Do you see? It's good. And you know why it's good? Because it's true. So it's the power that's within you. When the tomb has been rolled away from your life, and you are no longer held in check by the religious and the civil, you are now free. You are now free to leave that place where you have been held. Then the power comes down from that higher realm within you and sits upon that stone. In other words, you'll never be held bondage to the old crap again. Never again. Because now you're free. The stone is rolled away. Not to look in. Excuse me. Cast that out. Not to let anybody out because the vibrations are able to go through anything, but for everyone to see. And the angel sitting on a stone simply means that, never again. See, the 3 days, let me show you the cosmic implications of this, if you'll stay with me. Jesus in the tomb 3 days, and Jonah in the whale, and we just get down with that 3 days. It's very, very important. 3 days. And there are cosmic implications about this, and I'll show you what they are. Go to page 859 And look at Luke again, and let me show you something, okay? And let's see if we can figure this out biblically and make this as real as it possibly can be. Luke chapter 22, and go to verse 10. They're asking Jesus Christ, when will we, where will we see you that we can meet with you and have this supper with you and be together with you in this Passover? And Jesus makes this statement, behold, when you are entering into the city. The word city means consciousness and mysticism. There shall a man meet you bearing a pitcher of water. Follow him into the house, and he will show you a large upper room furnished. The man carrying the pitcher of water is not a man carrying a pitcher of water, because in those days a man wouldn't be caught dead carrying a pitcher of water. That was woman's work. The man carrying the pitcher of water has a name, and his picture is, did you see his picture as you come down the hall? His name is Aquarius. And Jesus Christ just made the profound statement, in the age of Aquarius, enter into the house. The house is you. You'll find a large upper room furnished. In other words, don't bring anything with you. Don't bring any of your Bibles or any of your religion. We don't need anything. It's all furnished. Everything you need is in the upper room. And that large upper room furnished is the right hemisphere of the brain. During the age of Aquarius, that's why they have meditation things in hospitals. That's why people all over the world, the Bill Moyers and all of these people, because people have seen the man with the pitcher of water, and they are following him and entering into the house and going to the upper room, and then they're finding something beautiful. And, I wanted you to see the 3 days. Because that's very important, because that fulfills the prophecy, doesn't it? 3 days in the tomb, and then Aquarius and out of the tomb. Let me show you something. Go with me to page 995. Okay, page 995, and look at the book here that's called 2 Peter, and I want you to look at chapter 3, okay, verse 8. Beloved, with me? Okay, 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8. You with me now? Come on, Joan. Okay, verse 8. But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. See it? One day as 1,000 years. How many years have gone by? 2,000. Since he uttered that statement. What is this? This is the third day. This is Sunday morning. Aquarius. The third day. He'll rise again. And within you is proved that's a fact. Aquarius is Sunday morning. In fact, on the cosmic clock, it's the 7th. And it is the third day. 2,000 years have passed. This is the dawning of the third day. This is Sunday morning. This is the day of resurrection. Let's just try to get as far as we can. I only have a couple more minutes, but it says in Matthew 28:3, page 800, where were we? 807. The angel, which is an inner impulse, was like lightning. Do you see that? Was like lightning, and his raiment white as snow. And here again we have symbolisms referring to what goes on inside of your mind. Has nothing to do with anybody sitting on a stone or anybody real. When we talk about lightning and that impulse of lightning, if you'll go with me real quick, and you don't have to go back too far, Matthew, page 802, just 5 pages back. And if you look at Matthew 24, okay, page 802, Matthew 24, verse 27, Jesus says that wisdom and understanding, for as lightning comes out of the east and shines unto the west, so also shall be the coming of the Son of Man. Look with me. As lightning comes out of the east and shines to the west. When you look north, okay, east is always at the right side. And what's being described as lightning is sudden and quick understanding and enlightenment that bursts forth from the right hemisphere to that which is the west or the left hemisphere. That which is the intellect is the west, that which is the spirit is the east, and as lightning comes from the east to the west, means as enlightenment and understanding comes from the right hemisphere of your brain, it will fill you and apply to that which is the left hemisphere of the brain or your intellect. As a result of this crucifixion, there is a sudden enlightenment. The stone has been rolled away by the power that you have sought within you. You are now free. Enlightening comes from the right side. From the creative right hemisphere of the brain comes understanding and peace. And you are made to understand and to know those things which are true of God's creative cosmic nature. His raiment white as snow means this is covering is pure, it's virgin. Remember, we've been talking about the sexual implications. This is an intercourse between your mind, which is the divine mind, which is Christ, and your spirit, which is the feminine principle. And the spirit within you must be virgin. The consciousness within you must be virgin. You must take no thought. There must be no stain of thought so that the pregnancy can take place and the Christ child can be born within the deep center of your consciousness, in virgin consciousness. And that's resurrection. And in Matthew 28:4, where we'll stop for today, it says, and for fear of him that keepers did shake and became as dead men. The impulse is frightening to the ones who keep the outside. They're totally outside of the realm of cosmic consciousness. And that's what's being described here. It scares the hell out of people for you to be coming and doing meditation. Do you know what religious people do? As you come down and you start, it scares them. They're afraid of that. Even if you go and you've got your crystal, they're afraid of that. Because they've always been taught this is evil. The thing that Jesus said is so important that you have to do. They said, this is evil. Because they say, oh, don't get into that. You're being deceived. It's deception and all of this stuff. Even though it's right, and even though it works, and even though it changes the world. What do we see on television? All of this stuff about meditation. Why? So people can get out from under the fear and the guilt that they've been put, under the violence that the earth has been, so that they can finally find within themselves, so that, as the fellow said, they can taste a raisin. We haven't even been able to do that. That they can then maybe taste their own breath to find out they are a living thing that is constructed to breathe and to bring in the earth and to bring out the earth and to place them in that holiness, where by following these simple instructions of the Christ, they are able then to move that energy upward, and that energy impacts on the holy place, and the doors to the right side to the temple come open for you. And it doesn't require you to join. It doesn't require you to pay anything. It doesn't require anything but you willing to discipline yourself to that holy silence within. And nobody can stop it. So the big fact is, they took prayer out of schools. You can't take prayer out of anything. As long as you are there, nobody can take prayer, because who can know? It's not that they want prayer in schools. They want a demonstration. And I would love to have the people that want prayer in school say, okay, fine. We'll have a Christian prayer on Monday. We'll have a Buddhist prayer on Tuesday. We'll have a Hindu prayer on Wednesday. We'll have a Muslim prayer on Thursday. And then maybe we'll throw in something from the African nations or the Indians. We'll have a war dance on Friday. Share it. They want that. It's once again, it's control. We want to control. We want our way to be, the way. So there, basically, that's where we've come from. And in a few weeks, we're going to do Matthew, the last of Matthew 28, and we'll conclude the book of Matthew, which is a pretty decent accomplishment. But I hope that you walk out of here understanding, if nothing else today, that you saw something very strange. Two things. One, the law, meaning religion, sees or hears what Jesus said much differently than his disciples do. You are his disciples. And you don't see things and hear things the way they do. And the second thing that I think is very important for you to understand is that you have been dead, and that tomb that has kept you sealed has been placed there by religion. But that which is the spirit within you, the power within you, has come hurtling down, blown that tomb, that stone away, that you can enter into the glory which is natural goodliness of God, the holiness of God, that which is the cosmic essence within you. And nobody, that angel sits upon that stone, nobody will ever be able to imprison you again. Nobody will ever be able to imprison you again, even no matter what you do, because you know what? You'll never think the same. Once you're exposed to this kind of thinking, you'll never think the same. You'll never go back to thinking the way you did. It's impossible. Absolutely impossible. Because every time you pick up the book, you'll not say, oh, this is what it says. You'll say, what is it saying? What does it mean? What is it really saying to me? What does the allegory mean? What's the symbolism? What's the numerology connected here? This is cosmic code that comes down, cosmic psychological code, and it's saying something beautiful to each one of you. And nobody will ever be able to put you back into that tomb and roll a stone and hold you in bondage as it has been in the future. It has been in the past. Thank you very much for